The theater lights gleamed as the stage announcer called the next audition. A petite Filipino mother and her teenage son walked nervously toward the center, holding hands tightly as if they were each other's anchor. Their clothes were simple, nothing flashy, showing they were not here for glamour but for something deeper. The mother introduced herself in a soft, accented voice, explaining that she and her son had come all the way from the Philippines to share the one thing that had carried them through the hardest days of their lives, music. She spoke of raising her son alone after her husband passed away, how they would sing together at night when there was no electricity in their small home, using songs to drown out the sound of hunger and to keep hope alive. The audience listened, some smiling warmly while others glanced with doubt, unsure if this modest pair could impress the famously tough judges. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms folded, his expression unreadable. The son clutched the microphone nervously, his wide eyes scanning the massive crowd. The mother reached over, squeezed his shoulder, and whispered something in Tagalog that made him nod with determination. It was a tender moment, a mother's encouragement giving her child courage. The judges exchanged quick looks, waiting to see what would happen next. A hush fell over the room as the instrumental track began to play. The boy took a deep breath, and together with his mother, they prepared to sing, not for fame or money, but to share their truth with the world. The music swelled softly from the speakers, and the boy raised the microphone to his lips. His first note rang out, clear, pure, and angelic. The sound carried through the theater like a breeze, instantly silencing every whisper in the crowd. Moments ago, people had doubted them, but now, all eyes were fixed on the young boy whose voice soared with emotion far beyond his years. His mother joined in, her deep, soulful tone blending seamlessly with her son's higher pitch. Their voices created a harmony that seemed almost magical, as though they were born to sing together. Simon Cowell's eyebrows lifted in surprise. He had seen thousands of acts, but something about this performance made him lean forward in his chair, captivated. The other judges exchanged wide-eyed glances, recognizing the unique connection between the mother's strength and the son's innocence, woven together in song. The audience began to react. At first, quiet nods and smiles, then applause started to ripple across the theater even as the performance continued. Some people clapped along with the rhythm, while others simply sat in awe, their mouths slightly open. The emotion in their voices told a story of hardship, resilience, and unbreakable family love. The boy took the lead in the chorus, his voice trembling with passion, and his mother's harmonies wrapped around him like a protective embrace. The sound grew bigger, stronger, until the entire theater vibrated with their music. The doubts were gone. In their place was admiration, respect, and wonder. By the end of the verse, it was clear, this was no ordinary audition. This was a once-in-a-lifetime moment, and the audience knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. As the song moved into its second half, the energy in the theater rose to a breathtaking height. The boy stepped forward for a solo verse, gripping the microphone tightly as if pouring his very soul into each lyric. His voice cracked slightly, not from weakness, but from raw, undeniable emotion. He glanced at his mother, and in that moment, their eyes locked. She gave him a small, reassuring smile before lifting her own microphone. Her voice entered once again, deeper and richer, merging with her son's fragile tone. The harmony filled the space like a tidal wave of sound, overwhelming in its beauty. The combination was more than technical skill, it was a story of survival, sacrifice, and unconditional love, told through every note. In the audience, tissues appeared as people wiped tears from their cheeks. The judges, too, were visibly shaken. One leaned forward with a hand pressed to their heart, while another shook their head in disbelief at how flawless and moving the performance had become. Simon Cowell, usually the most reserved, sat frozen with his eyes wide, his hand covering his mouth. The raw humanity of the performance had pierced through even his famously tough exterior. He wasn't just listening, he was feeling. As the final chorus came, mother and son held hands, their voices soaring together with power and tenderness. The crescendo hit like an emotional explosion, sending chills down every spine in the room. Then, the last note lingered in the air, fading into complete silence. For a brief moment, the theater was utterly still. Then, in a heartbeat, the silence shattered, audience members leapt to their feet in a roaring standing ovation. The performance hadn't just impressed, it had touched souls. The applause thundered through the theater, echoing like a storm that refused to die down. The mother and son stood on stage in tears, holding each other tightly as the audience continued to cheer. Confetti had not yet fallen, but the atmosphere already felt like a grand finale. The judges composed themselves, preparing to give feedback, though their emotions were clear on their faces. The first judge leaned forward, praising their courage to share such vulnerability on stage. Another judge called their harmonies unforgettable, saying it felt like listening to two hearts beating as one. Each comment brought more tears to the mother's eyes, but the son kept looking nervously toward Simon Cowell, the judge whose opinion mattered most. Simon sat in silence for a long moment, his gaze fixed on them. The crowd grew hushed, hanging on his every movement. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but powerful. "I've been in this industry a long time," he said, pausing to steady himself, "and I can honestly say that was one of the most moving performances I have ever heard on this stage." The audience erupted once again, cheering louder than before. But Simon wasn't finished. He looked down, his hand hovering over the buzzer. The mother and son gasped, realizing what might happen. With a sudden, decisive slam, Simon hit the golden buzzer. Instantly, the theater exploded, golden confetti burst from the ceiling, raining down in glittering waves. The mother covered her face, sobbing uncontrollably, while her son hugged her tightly, both overwhelmed by disbelief and joy. Simon stood up, clapping and smiling warmly, a rare sight. He walked toward the stage, telling them, "You've just reminded the world what music is really about: truth, love, and family." Backstage, the mother and son were still shaking, their clothes and hair covered in golden confetti. They hugged each other tightly, crying and laughing at the same time, unable to believe what had just happened. The boy whispered, "Mama, we did it," and she kissed his forehead, whispering back, "No, Anik, we did it, together." Their joy was contagious. Crew members, other contestants, and even the hosts wiped their eyes as they congratulated them. Meanwhile, clips of their performance began to spread like wildfire online. Within hours, social media platforms were flooded with reactions, fans replaying their audition, sharing emotional messages, and calling them an inspiration to families around the world. News outlets across Ireland and the Philippines reported on the story, highlighting not just their talent, but their bond as mother and son who had overcome hardships through music. In their home community back in the Philippines, neighbors gathered around televisions and mobile phones, celebrating their victory with pride. For many, it wasn't just about the golden buzzer, it was proof that dreams could come true, even for those who started with so little. On stage, the memory lingered. The audience that night left knowing they had witnessed more than just an audition, they had seen a moment of pure humanity. The mother and son had reminded everyone that music is not just about notes or technique, it's about heart, sacrifice, and the stories we carry within us. For the duo, this was only the beginning of their journey, but already, they had touched millions of lives. And as the golden confetti settled, one thing was clear: their voices would echo far beyond that stage, carrying hope and inspiration wherever their music was heard.